Hello, everyone. I'm Cedric Peterson, and welcome to another edition of Inside Government. My guest in this edition of the program is the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, the Honorable Silveria Jacobs. Prime Minister, great to have you once again in Inside Government. How are you?
Thank you so much, Cedric. It's always a pleasure to be here, and I must say I'm feeling elated, excited, happy. I am in a good place, and actually, regardless of what's going on, that's my new, let's call it mantra, that's my new outlook on life, and I'm really just all about the positivity, but today it's extra, extra, extra.
Extra, extra. It's great. And
Yeah.
what we're talking about and what you're going to be communicating to the public of St. Martin at this point is none other than the deviation through Article 25 granted to St. Martin. The budget of 2022, congratulations, you and the council, the members of parliament playing their role, approving the budget for 2022. It came with a little bit of course, debate as usual. However, there was a key point being brought up concerning the national budget and its approving. What would be the next step at this particular point when it comes to the approval of the budget?
Yes, I'm so happy you asked that, Cedric, because I think the general public isn't quite aware of the administrative procedure as it relates to handling any law. The budget is a law, and as such, once we've gotten all the necessary advices from the CFD, from the Council of Advice, Legal Affairs has done their vetting. It is sent to Parliament via His Excellency the Governor. The Parliament, in turn, as you mentioned, does its due diligence in handling that law. That is part of the trajectory to handle a law. There was this big debate, as everyone knows, as to whether they should have handled it prior to us actually receiving the requested deviation to be able to have an unbalanced or deficit budget, which is regulated within the Kingdom Law for Financial Supervision, also known as the RFT. The CFT is the body that advises the Kingdom Council of Ministers, that works with our finance ministry to come to a position where we have an agreement on what the budget should be. So once knowing that we've requested it, as is our legal obligation, once we know that we have a deficit, the law prescribes that we are allowed to have a deficit for disaster situations, etc. So it's justifiable. The CFT has ruled on that, not just for St. Martin, but also for Aruba and Curacao. And as such, we are eligible to receive the agreement or the approval for the deviation of our budget. Knowing all that, we saw absolutely no reason, not within the law or otherwise, to stall the process of the legislative handling in Parliament. Knowing also, as you asked before, what's next? Once that budget was approved by a majority of Parliament, Parliament Secretariat then has quite some work to do to finalize its report and to ensure that the proper documents are then sent to government, back to the government, to make the necessary changes. As you know, there were several notes of amendment, both from the government side as well as from the Parliament side. So that's quite some work administratively that has to be done. Legal Affairs also has to vet and ensure that all of the necessary changes have been incorporated. And what I can inform the people of St. Martin is that this week, starting about Tuesday, we started to receive some of the documents from Parliament, but it was not complete until yesterday, February 3rd, that the Legal Affairs Department confirmed that they'd received everything and had forwarded the relevant parts that the Finance Ministry had to adjust. So that is a process where we are right now. So the approval of the Kingdom Council of Ministers to deviate happened today, and we are right in the process of adjusting what needs to be adjusted based on what was approved in Parliament. And that projection, based on what the emails I saw going back and forth, we expect that by next week sometime, that the Finance Department will be done. Then we administratively have the Secretariat of Parliament check to ensure that this is what Parliament approved. And once we get that go ahead, let's say, we forward the documents completely onto His Excellency the Governor, who signs it and then returns it to government for our co-signature, thereby ratifying our budget. enacting the budget.
Exactly.
And then Legal Affairs publishes it in the National Gazette.
Okay. So that being the lengthy process, which I think sometimes kind of evades the
general
eyes of the
population.
public,
Yes.
so that they're not aware, because they always say, why can't we just get it done? That is indeed the lengthy process. Normally, is there a timeline when all of this is executed that you can give an average time? Is there,
It totally depends on the type of law. So, for instance, if a law had gone to Parliament and there had been no amendments, it would come back after a couple of days that the Secretariat of Parliament had done its due diligence. A certain way would take a couple of days, and the relevant ministry. So whichever ministry, in this case, the budget is finance. So between legal affairs and general affairs, legal affairs and finance, we would then ensure that whatever had to be done is done. Because of the budget being such a large, having not just the law, but the attachments, which is the getallenboek, the numbers, and the numbers had to change. And then therefore the toelichting, which is the note, the explanatory notes, also have to be adjusted to reflect the changes that are made. So it is the law that needs to amend, in this case, the numbers, the book of numbers, as well as the explanatory notes. Okay. Because you have to give the explanation in the explanatory notes, in the proper legislative language, to be able to elucidate what is now being approved or now being going forward for ratification in the budget. So that process, if it's a small amendment, can take a week or two. If it's something larger, and we did mention that there were quite some amendments, it can take a couple of weeks. And just ensuring that it is a correct version that goes to the governor for signature is also very, very important, so that they really do ensure that that is done. So, Cedric, the rhetoric that was brought up in Parliament, and what I was trying to explain is, if we had waited, as had been proposed, we got the RMR decision today, the 4th, on the 7th we will start to handle the budget, or on the 7th we would then vote on the budget, then you would only then be starting the process that Parliament took from approval to today to do. So that's another 2 weeks. Yeah. And then another 2 weeks or a week and change, depending, at government to ensure that the changes are made. So then we would have been talking March, maybe April, depending, So we're still aiming right now for mid-February, but there's no guarantees that the meticulousness that needs to take place in the changes that have to happen would happen as we want it in a week. So we're still hoping for the week, but at least it is clear now the ratification can take place based on the fact that we have received the deviation as an RMR decision today, without any conditions other than what the law prescribes. So CFT recommendations have to be taken into consideration, and they will continue to assess our needs. So it's for 124 million, but should it not be the case, we generate more funds, it would be less that the liquidity support would be from the Netherlands in that case.
Prime Minister, thank you so much for joining us for this edition of the program. And of course, we're going to get into our second segment where we're going to talk about the new incoming state secretary who's made this process a little bit easier for St. Martin as we continue to talk about affairs related to St. Martin. If you're just joining us, you're listening to and viewing Inside Government. Stay tuned. So, you want to join the Dutch Caribbean Coast Guard? You obviously got very high standards. Now is the time to get started. Every Saturday, starting January 22nd until February 19th, get down to the Walter Plant Square in Phillipsburg at 8 a.m. sharp for the Dutch Caribbean Coast Guard pre-test to see if you have what it takes to be a Coast Guard officer. For more information, visit kustwacht.org. The Dutch Caribbean Coast Guard, St. Martin. Strong together.
Do you know there is such a thing as teen dating violence? Seriously, there is. When your boyfriend or girlfriend is controlling your every move, trolling you online, checking your social media page, recording you without your permission, or forcing you to do things you don't want to do, this is abuse. If you find yourself in this situation, please talk to someone you can trust. your parents, school counselor, or the police.
This message has been brought to you by Women's Desk.
Hello and welcome once again to Inside Government. If you're just joining us, our guest in this edition is the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, the Honorable Silveria Jacobs. We're also talking about the deviation of Article 25 RFT granted to St. Martin and how this is affecting our way forward when it comes to Budget 2022. Prime Minister, the last thing we teased was the new incoming State Secretary. That is Alexandra Van Hoffelen. Is your new State Secretary bringing a refreshing take on the negotiation process, dealing with matters related to St. Martin. We can sense this when reading the press releases based on the meetings that you've had. Give us some insight. What is the discussion like now with this new State Secretary when it comes to St. Martin's matters?
Yes, Cedric, I must say that it is indeed quite refreshing. I don't feel like I'm going into a combative discussion. I had to learn a lot, and probably it was for the best. I had to learn a lot about diplomacy over the last 2 years, that despite personal feelings, despite feeling that we were being treated unfairly, that I never closed the door on communication with our kingdom partners. During this period of 2 years, not only was I able to grow personally from having to deal with the many obstacles we faced, but St. Martin also got a better look firsthand. I think my transparency in the way things were going also helped the people of St. Martin to understand the realities of what persons in the past within my function has also had to face. It is just refreshing that you come to the table with someone, there's history, but this person comes with a outlook of, we want to work together to resolve the challenges that you feel. You are part of this kingdom, and that is refreshing. And even though that might have been said before, the manner in which the discussions have gone, this whole period has also brought the three countries within the Caribbean closer together and realizing the strength in numbers, in whole in one head, as we would say in St. Martin. And we had individual meetings and we had meetings together as all three prime ministers with the new state secretary. And all of us came back from our individual meetings with the same feeling, that the person seems sincere, that she seems fair, that she seems willing to have the tough discussions. And that's not to say we won't disagree in the future. It just means that you get the feeling that it will not be that when we disagree, it's punitive. So while we were in the midst of budget, I explained to her the serious political, let's call it, discourse that had been taking place as it relates to the deviation. And that as St. Martin, we felt that the former state secretary stepped out of his bounds by putting that as a condition, or the condition of agreeing to the note of amendment as a condition to having the decision for the approval of the Article 25 of the RFT, which in and of itself, the kingdom law states and dictates what has to be in place for it to be. So for the government of the Netherlands via the state secretary to have said, in order for you to do this, this will be the case, I'm very, very happy that as three countries, we stood our ground and said, but this cannot be. Even if we agree to the note of amendment, it cannot be placed on the kingdom agenda as a condition. And the state secretary agreed. The new state secretary agreed. So there was no discussion. There was no debate when she came in. The same day she came in, and then following meeting that we had, the introductory meeting, she's willing to work. I told her up front, this thing is serious. We were able to connect on a personal level as well. And she got the information from the ground also on St. Martin. She got the necessary advice. And the first thing in our official meeting was the agenda to handle this point is going, it's going to be on the agenda without any other conditions. And we would move on to the other discussions. There was no need to debate it. So that already gave me a sense of, at least I get a feeling now that there is understanding. And that equitable feeling will be there. And I try to convey that in Parliament, and I think we can all go back to the tapes and hear the naysayers saying, well, I'll believe it when I see it, etc., etc. And she's lived up to her word. What has happened here today is clear evidence, and I've already experienced it in the subsequent meetings, that this state secretary lives up to her word.
Strong governments within the kingdom makes for a much stronger kingdom moving forward. We all have our parts to play, and St. Martin being a brand new democracy on this planet, we have a lot of work to do, and you did indicate that, Prime Minister. There's so much that you have learned in this process.
Oh, yeah.
Prime Minister, the question now is that's on everyone's mind, is the deviation being granted and approved for St. Martin's unbalanced budget during the Kingdom Council of Ministers held on February 4th. Now, the next process, as you indicated, we're going through this vetting process before it gets to His Excellency, the Governor. I want to focus in on the budget itself. There's some promising comments that came from Parliament this morning. For example, Friday, February 4th, where members of Parliament indicated what the budget means. Let's talk about that just a little bit. I want to get a take on that. Prior to this interview, I said I would like to hear what the Prime Minister of our nation has to say concerning what this budget means for the country St. Martin. I think that message needs to get out to the public of St. Martin. Can you elucidate on that for us and let us know? What does Budget 2022 mean for the people of St. Martin moving forward?
Right. So every time we pass a budget, approve a budget, and ratify it, that gives us the green light for really the new expenses. You've seen that we've had budgets approved very, very late, but that limited you as a government to execute any new things. You could only go as far as your previous budget allowed in the subsequent year. So all now, we're working off of 2021's approved budget, which was also late in the year, and we were limited. Capital expenditures can now be requested with an approved budget and ratified budget. So once it's ratified, of course, the Minister of Finance can write into the Netherlands, who has the right of first refusal for our CapEx. And with the approval today, it's also that all capital expenditures, as well as liquidity support needs, still have to come through the Kingdom Council of Ministers. Yeah. So I also heard that in Parliament being asked, what else? I'm going to wait until I see the full thing. And I am preparing a Karma brief, as they call it, to inform Parliament in writing. And if they require that I come to Parliament to give further elucidation, I'm always prepared to do that. In the past, when I have postponed it, it was because I wanted to make sure I had all my information. And especially if you're still in the negotiation stage, to go and have a public meeting about something, then your negotiation partner knows what you're coming with. So I held back a little bit just before budget meeting, but I am well ready and willing to further divulge to the Parliament and the public, where we're going, what we have to do. But we have many more dialogue discussions to have with the kingdom and with Basic Gas specifically, as it relates to the measures that we still have, as it relates to the agreements moving forward with the amendments, etc.
Okay, PM, I want to give you a little bit more time to explain, again, on that question concerning what the budget means to the people of St. Martin. Let's take our break at this particular point. If you're just joining us, you're viewing and listening to Inside Government. We're talking to the Prime Minister, the Honorable Silveria Jacobs. What does the budget 2022 mean for the people of St. Martin? Prime Minister is going to get more into that as we get back from the break. Stay tuned.
The government of St. Martin would like to announce the 2022 procedures for paying vehicle tax. Starting January 1st, 2022, along with the in-person payments and bank transfers, it is now possible for the public to pay online with a credit and/or debit card. Visit services.stmartingov.org for more information on electronic bank transfers. The business community and other organizations are requested to submit a copy of the following documents for their vehicle fleet and/or employees. 1. A valid insurance card. 2. A valid inspection card. And 3. Proof of online payment. The above documents can be dropped off in the receiver's drop box located at the Government Administration Building. Please ensure your documents are sealed in an envelope with your company and/or organization name and contact number. This option is also possible for independent groups such as family members, friends, etc., who wish to receive their number plates in bulk to avoid long lines. Please note this is only applicable for 6 persons or more. You will be contacted within 3 working days to pick up your receipts and number plates. For more information on rates and tariffs, please visit the government's website, services page, and the official Facebook page.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our final segment of Inside Government, where we're talking to the Prime Minister concerning the decision made on Friday, February 4th, 2022, by the Kingdom Council of Ministers as it relates to the deviation of Article 25 RFT granted to St. Martin. Prime Minister, we left off in the second segment talking specifically about what the budget means to the people of St. Martin. I want to allow you some more time there to kind of fill that in for us on what this means so that the listeners who just tuned in could be updated.
Right. So each ministry would have certain things that they are really fighting for, that are priorities for them. And I know that the Ministry of VSI has quite some laws that need changing. So they needed to make an extra investment into legislative lawyers that they do not have on board. Capacity in general in government, we keep hearing that word, meaning we don't have enough qualified persons in certain positions that required to do the work. So you have to budget for new hires. You cannot make those new hires without having your budget approved. Also, the legislation for VSI under SZV, and to do more work in terms of non-communicable diseases prevention. That is on VSI's trajectory, making more tests available for vulnerable persons, increasing also, we're looking at the minimum wage and those type of things. Not a minimum wage, sorry, but the assistance to persons based on income. You need to give more than you gave last time.
Right.
You
Social
have to
welfare,
have the budget, social welfare, right. Whether it's financing, whether it's medical, whatever it is. So any increases that would affect the budget affects the services that we can give. Under the Ministry of Finance, we would, of course, have the things that have to do with financial management improvement that we want to do. By General Affairs, the digitalization falls under General Affairs, and we're moving towards more digital services to facilitate for our people. That at DCOM, for instance, if we get through with the capital expenditures, the much needed upgrades will be done so that we're better able to broadcast and do more in terms of communication, and then bring down your regular costs once you make those investments. There is so much, Cedric. More roads can be fixed. Wow, I could just go on and on. The Ministry of Rami especially will have record numbers in terms of what will be fixed. And we also have to increase our agricultural subsidies and any other subsidies that a ministry would want to expand in. And, many motions were passed regarding that as well, to make that available. Did I mention COVID testing? A lot of the charges that were being covered by the Dutch government during the pandemic, as we move toward normalcy, will have to be covered by this government. So then we're talking about increased budgeting for that. And for, the function books that have been approved as well by LB Hum. The minister had to make provisions within her budget for the increased payments as well. So, there's a lot. But for me, especially being able to have that capital investments. For the people of St. Martin, even though we've had approved budgets before, the capital investments was not signed on for. So this will especially get the attention of the State Secretary as soon as we have ratified our budget and the minister has written that request, the Minister of Finance that is, so that we can ensure that the much needed improvements, whether it's the buildings, infrastructure, whether it's maintenance, whether it's just new, stuff that you need at DCOM and for the roads to be built, etc., that we can do that and not go into operational costs.
Right. The government, of course, internally taking care of all the things in regard to the vision moving forward with regard to government programs. But there's also the responsibility the government has to third parties that have that we subsidize as well. Talk a little bit about that, the opportunities.
Also, yes. So policy changes, which were also brought forth in amendments and motions, require increase in subsidies. So if you're adding more types of services, you will have to increase your budget for the subsidies that you give to third parties to carry out the things that as a government you think are important. And our government program, our governing program, and the National Development Vision is really looking at creating more opportunities also for continuing education and making that more available for the people of St. Martin. We have a deal for the Coursera courses, for instance, and all of that is new, basically. So opportunity. And once you have the approved budget, of course, liquidity will always be a problem. We still have to get on a quarterly basis approval for the needed liquidity from our finance minister. We're good for this first quarter. Assessments will be done together with the CFT. And if liquidity is approved, then we will see that for the second quarter or third quarter as it becomes necessary. But we are seeing improvements in our economic development. So investments in that as well, in terms of ensuring that we can collect what is due to government to be able to live up to our responsibilities, is part of the approved budget as well, or the ratified budget as well.
Prime Minister, 2 minutes left in this edition of the program. Final words to the public of St. Martin.
Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you for your patience. This change of government within the Netherlands has brought a breath of fresh air in terms of kingdom relations, but also finance and also climate and energy. There are 3 D66 members who have heard our cry in the past. And today in the Kingdom Council of Ministers, they also express support for the islands and will be looking at even more ways in which they can support us. That is a first for us in the Kingdom Council of Ministers, where I'm very much used to hearing the naysayers. And I must say it's refreshing. It gives me more confidence that the relations within the kingdom can improve, whereby it is more equitable. And as the State Secretary herself said in her letter to me, honest and respectful of each other. And if I get that from her in writing, and I get all the promises thus far made being lived up to, I can expect that together we can, and St. Martin will grow to the point where we need less and have gained the necessary capacity to stand on our own feet.
Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, the Honorable Silveria Jacobs. Prime Minister, thank you once again for bringing us this update and updating us in this edition of the program.
Thank you. Until next time.
And to our radio listeners and television viewers, thank you for tuning in and being a part of this edition of Inside Government. If you've missed the broadcast, we invite you, of course, to get video on demand at the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin. That's facebook.com/SXMGOV. We invite you to join us and subscribe to the official YouTube channel of the Government of St. Martin. Be sure to hit that bell notification so you can stay up to date with all future programming. And, of course, tune in via TV to cable TV channel 115 and Telem TV Plus. And for audio, be sure to stay tuned to St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM. On behalf of all of us here at the Department of Communication, I'm Cedric Peterson. Thanks so much for tuning in.